Midcentury Neighborhoods in Tucson Part 1. Tucson had a building boom after World War II, and as a result, there's some great Tucson mid-century neighborhoods. The budgets can be a little bit more modest to the expansive. One of our favorite developers was the Lusk Corporation, and they have 5 really great examples of mid-century neighborhoods, so we're going to be focusing on them in Part 1 of this video, so stay tuned. I'm Kim Labriola. I work with Tierra Antigua Realty, and along with my wife, Kim.
Hi there.
The bottom line is we're kind of architecture nerds. Kim was born and raised here. She's kind of into Tucson history and knows a lot about it. And our niche is historic homes. We sell a lot of homes near the University of Arizona, downtown. Of course, we can help you with newer properties as well. Mid-century neighborhoods have a special place in our heart. So in this series, we're going to start with mid-century neighborhoods.
So if you love mid-century neighborhoods or houses in Tucson, you'll want to know about these 5 mid-century neighborhoods that we're talking about today, which, like Nick said, were developed by the Lusk Corporation. It was founded by 26-year-old Robert F. Lusk Jr. back in 1950 in Tucson. The building design work was led by Arthur Rader from 1954 to 1957. And then in 1958, he hired architect Ray Kruger to design the homes from 58 to 62. Although the Lusk Corporation was started in Tucson, they eventually developed neighborhoods all across the country. They were actually the 5th largest builder in the nation at that time. They built homes in Nevada, California, Texas, Indiana, Missouri, New Mexico, Illinois, and New York. They were the only builder to win the prestigious National Association of Home Builders Award of Merit for 5 consecutive years.
Say that 5 times fast.
5 of those were for neighborhoods in the Tucson area, and those are the 5 neighborhoods that we're going to talk about here.
So Lusk built mid-century homes in a modern ranch style, and they were often constructed of burnt adobe, which is more of a regional material. You don't see it as much in other parts of the country. They would have had somewhat open floor plans. They would be known for expansive glass. Often they would have floor-to-ceiling windows. They'd have clear story windows. They'd have a sloped roof. Actually, on my t-shirt here, if you see the elevation, this might be an elevation you would expect to see in a mid-century Tucson neighborhood.
Well, that's a Lusk home there.
This is actually a Lusk home. They'd often have fireplaces that would have 2 to 3 sides exposed and sliding windows. They would have a bonus room back then called an activity room. Now, all good things eventually came to an end, and the Lusk Corporation overextended themselves a little bit. They had a failed merger and a slowdown in the housing demand in the mid-60s. Ultimately, they had to shut down in 1966. So the first neighborhood we're going to be talking about today is Indian Ridge, and Kim's going to tell you a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so Indian Ridge is one of my favorite Lusk neighborhoods, and it's probably, I would consider it their crown jewel. It's located on the northeast side of Tucson near Tanqueverde Road and Sabino Canyon Road. They have a very active voluntary HOA. The HOA mostly plans community social events. They do things like Luminaria night in the holidays and other different parties and parades and such. The neighborhood also has a community pool that's available for an additional charge, and they have their own swim team, which I think is kind of cool. Indian Ridge features larger lots. So the typical lot is usually about a 1/3 acre, maybe pushing a 1/2 acre, sometimes a little bit larger. The homes also tend to be on the larger side. Usually about the smallest home in there that you would find would be about 1,600 square feet. And then over the years, homes have had additions and such. So sometimes you'll find them up to like 2,600 square feet. The neighborhood has mix of old Aleppo pine trees that were really popular back in the 50s and 60s. They also have a lot of desert vegetation like mesquite trees.
It's got a bit of a rolling topography too, so you do get some views in some of the lots.
The streets are pretty wide. They don't have sidewalks. So I think the lack of sidewalks makes it feel a little bit more rural. But you'll oftentimes see people, walking or jogging because the streets are so wide you don't feel unsafe. There's lots of room for, cars to pass.
Yeah, it was located in unincorporated Pima County, which is outside of the official boundaries of the city of Tucson, but then the city kind of grew around it. So it is a very cool location because it's close to a lot of the amenities that are in town, and it affords a larger lot size that newer construction, they tend to plat the neighborhoods with less than 0.2 acre lots. So it's kind of neat to be able to buy that type of location in the central part of Tucson and have more of a rural feel. Now, along with that, Tucson Water does provide water, but you have to pay for a subscription trash service. And a lot of the lots are connected to the sewer system, but some of them are on a septic system instead. The location itself is located near Udall Park, which is a large rec center. It has soccer and ball fields, tennis, pickleball. There's walking paths, a dog park. They also host things like farmers market. Kim and I like to go see the symphonic winds where they'll do music in the park. And as I mentioned, it's close to all of your errands like banks, grocery shopping, things like that. Right. There's some great local restaurants. Renee's Tucson is close by. Coco and Mom's Cantina is another good local restaurant. It's a short drive up to Sabino Canyon, and then there's a lot of great hiking opportunity. And before they developed the neighborhood, it was actually the site, the Hohokam people lived there between 1150 and 1450 AD. And so there's 13-acre ruin site in the middle of the neighborhood still. Mm-hmm. And in 1933, they gifted it to UA, Department of Anthropology. That's still protected in the middle of the neighborhood.
Right. And one thing Nick didn't mention was Indian Ridge is in a historic district. So what that means to a potential homeowner is that you can save on property taxes as long as you refrain from making major changes to the exterior of the home.
If you learn anything from this video, please like, share, and subscribe. And of course, hit the notification bell so you know when new videos are coming out. We'll be making a part 2 of this video talking about other neighborhoods soon. So next on our list is Highland Vista neighborhood. And Highland Vista is located in central Tucson near Broadway and Craycroft. The homes here aren't as much burnt adobe. There's a little more variety with these homes. And at that time, Lusk had hired a local architect named Ann Rysdale to design some of the homes. She was the only registered female architect working in the 50s in Arizona at that time. And she has a really cool style. Kim also did another article about her. So if you want more information on Ann Rysdale, she's an interesting person.
She did quite a variety of homes and commercial spaces. There's, what's that bar on Grant?
The Shelter.
The Shelter, which is still in operation. She designed that. There's a building on Speedway called the Sun Building. She designed that. The iconic Tucson Inn, which if you're familiar at all on Drachman, it's that big Tucson neon sign, which is actually being,
sign, aren't they?
It's being restored currently. She designed that motel and the signage for that motel. And I actually got to see her speak a few years ago. At the time, she was in her 90s, and she was just as sharp as a tack. So it was really neat to see her talk about some of her projects and how it was, working in a very male-dominated field at that time.
So there's some very cool architectural variety in the neighborhood. They also have some amenities like a centrally located park that also includes a community garden. There's enough room to kick a ball around, play some frisbee. There's a playground. There's also a pool there that you can pay an additional fee for. And I think they might have a swim team also.
They do. I think their swim team is called the Wahoos. I don't know what a Wahoo is, but...
Don't know. So lot sizes here tend to be about a fifth of an acre. Homes tend to be a little smaller, 1,200 square feet to 2,200 square feet. The neighborhood has some really great architecture. It's a little more budget friendly, which is cool. It's also close to shops and restaurants. It's near the Williams Center and also Park Place Mall. And across from Park Place Mall is another good local restaurant called Cayetepa.
So in no particular order, we'll talk about number 3 on our list, which is San Rafael Estates. So speaking of Park Place Mall, San Rafael Estates is just across the corner from Park Place Mall. It's at Broadway and Wilmot on the northeast corner. It's also close to St. Joseph's Hospital, and there's a lot of medical facilities in that general area. It's also walkable to the Wilmot Library. If you are a fan of modernist architecture, you definitely want to check out the Wilmot Library. It was built in the 60s. It was designed by Nicholas Sekeller. It is gorgeous. It was my childhood childhood library. At one point, they were planning
They're going to bulldoze it.
They were going to bulldoze it and build a new library.
But then there was a lot of public support for the library. His son, Dino, and I believe his daughter took over his practice, and they were hired to do the remodel. So instead of raising and bulldozing building, they remodeled it and took off some of the bad additions. Kim has also done an article on Nicholas Keller. He was more of a commercial architect, but he also had some really cool residential projects. So if you ever come across one of those, they're pretty special. Mm-hmm. It's also near the Bisbee Breakfast Club. Because of all of the different medical facilities, if you're a medical professional, it's probably a pretty cool location to take a look at.
It's a smaller neighborhood. There's only about 69 homes in the neighborhood. There's about 3 different floor plans in the neighborhood. They're called the Lanai, the Monterey, and the Homes for All America. And Lusk was they wanted to make every neighborhood look not cookie cutter at all. They wanted each home to look different. So they offered to either site the homes differently, and they would also offer different building materials and different colors and such to make it look,
a little more variety.
Individual.
This neighborhood to me feels like a little sister to Indian Ridge. It's really high quality construction, but a little bit smaller development.
And smaller homes.
Smaller homes.
Smaller lots.
But it's got a similar feel to Indian
homes,
Ridge.
It seems like in that area, homes do not go on the market very often.
And they are usually 3 to 4 bedroom homes with 2 baths. Square footage ranges from about 1,500 to 2,200 square foot. The lots are about a quarter acre, which is a pretty big lot size. And that's where I think it has kind of like the little sister to Indian Ridge feel. They also have a community pool. I don't think they have a swim team.
No.
But because of the central location, it's near a lot of amenities like we talked about. It's also a historic district. So if you are in a contributing home, you would still be eligible for the tax discount. And the streets there were named after Catholic saints. And in the Catholic religion, San Rafael is known for healing powers. The use of the names was a nod to the fact that the land was purchased by the Lusk Corp from the Sisters of St. Joseph of Carondelet,
who basically started the St. Joseph's Hospital.
If you have questions, if you'd like to get started buying or selling a home, you can always call, text, or email either one of us. Coming up next, we have Kingston Knolls Terrace. And Kingston Knolls is north of Broadway Boulevard, and it stretches from both sides of Kolb, which is a pretty major north-south street. The portion of the neighborhood located on the west side of Kolb is also known as El Gecko. And you might be thinking, what's an El Gecko? It's an acronym of several nearby neighborhoods.
It's not the little
It's not the guy that gives you a discount on your
No, it's not
insurance.
That guy.
No, it's an acronym for several nearby neighborhoods, which include El Dorado, Green Hills, Harold Bell Wright, which is named after the author, and Kingston Knolls. We're probably going to be getting into some of these neighborhoods in the next segment of this series. Homes here are located along curvilinear, meandering streets. The home models available in Kingston Knolls have fanciful tropical names such as the Flamingo, the Caribbean, Tropicana, Holiday, and Bermuda. Street names such as Montego, Elbow Bay, and Port-au-Prince continue the tropical island theme.
If I lived in that neighborhood and knew that I lived in the Flamingo model house, I would definitely paint all of my eaves Flamingo pink. There's no HOA, so you can do that, right? And I would definitely make sure to have my little pink plastic flamingos out in the front yard.
There you go. So homes here are typically around 1,300 to 2,000 square feet. This would be another example of a neighborhood where you could buy a cool mid-century home on a little bit more of a modest budget. They're often 3 to 4 bedrooms with 2 baths. Lot sizes are about 0.2 acres, which is still a good lot size, but not as big as San Rafael.
But compared to like new homes, those are huge. That's probably twice the yard size of a new home.
That's true. Oftentimes it's about 0.15 acres on the newer construction, and they're putting larger houses with garages on a smaller parcel. So you will have a good sized yard in these properties. Most of the homes are built of burnt adobe construction, but they also advertise split block and patterned or smooth pumice block. They also advertise Lusk Mission Stone. We've not really run across that in our travels.
I don't know what Lusk Mission Stone is, but maybe it was painted block. If anybody knows, let us know.
Yeah, leave it in the comments below. We'd appreciate it. And back in 1958, these homes sold starting at $12,950. Wadaganga. The last neighborhood we're going to talk about is Suffolk Hills, and Kim's going to tell you a little bit more about this one.
Suffolk Hills is one of two Lusk neighborhoods that's in the northwest side of Tucson, which is actually within the town of Oro Valley. I think Oro Valley came about in the mid-70s. Suffolk Hills was developed in the late 50s, back before Oro Valley was a thing. It's located near Oracle Road and McGee Road. It's pretty close to the Casas Adobes Plaza, which is a shopping district that has a lot of local restaurants. It also has a Whole Foods and a Starbucks. It's also close to the Trader Joe's on Oracle as well. This neighborhood kind of is similar to Indian Ridge, where the lots are large. Actually, the lots are larger than Indian Ridge. It's also on kind of hilly terrain. So the benefit of that is you get, because it's sort of on the western edge of the Catalina Mountains, you get a lot of mountain views, but you also get a lot of city views too, because you're raised up a little higher. Suffolk Hills consists of about 195 ranch-style homes on usually about 3/4 of an acre up to an acre or a little larger. They are usually around, the smallest is about 1,500 square feet. The larger ones are usually around somewhere in the 2,000s up to maybe 2,600 square feet. They're typically 3 to 4 bedroom, typically 2 baths. Of course, over the years, people have added on, so you might find something larger than that. But because of that hilly topography and the amount of space between the homes, it feels, there's a lot of desert vegetation. It kind of feels like you're in the desert.
It feels more rural.
It feels more rural.
And
there's
actually,
going to be a lot of cacti. There's going to be a lot of native vegetation like mesquites and palo verdes and stuff like that.
And when the neighborhood won the Award of Merit, the NAHB judges noted the usage of natural terrain, preservation of the natural desert scenery, and the emphasis on maintaining home individuality, which set this development apart.
If you're like me, you might wonder about the Anglophile names of the neighborhood and the streets. Some of the streets are named Royal Court, Cambridge Drive, Sussex, and Eaton. The neighborhood was named in honor of Countess of Suffolk, who purchased the land back in 1937. About 20 years later, she decided the city was encroaching too close to her, so she sold the land at that point to the Lusk Corporation, and she actually moved closer to where the Biosphere 2 campus is now located. But her home ended up becoming the Sisters of Immaculate Heart of Mary, which still use it to operate their Immaculate Heart School.
So some other Lusk neighborhoods in the Tucson area. There's some on the east side. Glen Heather Estates is located near Broadway and Kolb. There's Desert Steps, Sherwood Village, and Cloud Ridge, and those are all located near Broadway and Pantano or Broadway and Sarnoff. And there's also one of the later developments that Lusk did near Lakeside, near Pantano and Stella. In Central, Colonia Alegre, near Broadway and Columbus, this was the very first Lusk neighborhood. And in it, there's oftentimes an evolution with these properties. It's not like they knew at the time that they were building mid-century modern properties. I think a lot of these developers and builders were trying to differentiate themselves. There was probably a good amount of friendly competition going on. There was some probably plagiarism going on, because oftentimes you'll see a design element in one neighborhood, and then a couple of years later, a new neighborhood near there starts incorporating some of those ideas. When they started out, they were still cool houses. They were cut brick, but they had more of a traditional look to them.
Yeah, they had hip roofs. They're, ranch style homes, but they usually would have hip roofs with the shingles. But yeah, look a little bit more like the traditional ranch style home. And usually the earlier homes also, I think, had one carport space.
Right. Or
the less expensive Lusk homes would oftentimes have one carport space. The more expensive Lusk homes like Indian Ridge and Suffolk Hills, and even probably San Rafael, those would generally have 2 carport spaces.
And the funny thing too is we like to have garages now to store things. At the time, your automobile was more of a status symbol. So having a carport, you got to show off your cool car as well. So Colonia Alegre, that would be an example of one of the first neighborhood. But then there's also Citation Park, which is south of Reed Park near Palo Verde Avenue. There's Glen Air neighborhood near Glen and Beverly. And also Villa Serena, which is near Pima and Saguaro Avenue.
The second Lusk neighborhood in Oro Valley on the northwest side of town is called Shadow Mountain Estates, and that's near Calle Concordia and Calle Buena Vista. In addition to these, You'll find Lusk Homes kind of sprinkled here and there. They also built custom homes on other sites that were not necessarily in their neighborhoods.
Somebody may have had a lot, and then they would just hire Lusk to
build a home there.
a semi-custom home on their lot. So they turn up in different places around town.
Right. And then on that same note, oftentimes, if you are in a Lusk neighborhood, there are a lot of homes that were not built by Lusk because they went out of business in the 60s. Some of their later neighborhoods may have not been completely
finished by Lusk.
Yeah, they may have not been completely built out yet. So you'll find some beauty built homes and some other different builders in those areas.
But even in like Highland Vista, I think they may have sometimes reserved lots for other builders. Ann Ralliesdale was an example of another architect that Lusk hired. But there's some Tom Gists in Highland Vista and a couple other smaller builder architects. So there's some good variety. I don't know if they did that as a conscious effort or perhaps it was just economic reason at the time. Throughout their career, it seems like there is a bit of variety like that. For more details about what's currently available in these neighborhoods, please see the links below in the description. We're happy to answer any real estate questions that you may have, and you can call, text, or email either of us. Our information is in the description below. There's a lot more wonderful mid-century neighborhoods in Tucson. So if you love mid-century neighborhoods, if you really love mid-century neighborhoods, you should stay tuned. Click subscribe for future notifications.
And we'll have a volume 2 soon. Bye.